everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome to the end of this story. Yep, it's the final couple of pages. Only 12, so they should be pretty short. Last time it was, well, quite weird. With jelly figures and monsters and such, but hey, you know what? This should be fine. But yep, as we do, since 30 seconds just hit, let's start. She headed back to her neighborhood. Maya's street was thick and it was pellucid creatures. When she reached it, she gazed down on the road in her house. It looked like her driveway was turned into a massive heap of jello. She took her to her right. The van was idling in front of the Thompson's house. Only a few of the mannequin things were lying around the two-story structure. Maya was trying to take care of the last surviving man of the family, Donnie. She figured that she might as well leave the car there and run in to check on him. She could hopefully jog home behind the houses, keeping away from the many jelly people as possible. Maya pulled into the Thompson's driveway. She quickly got out of the car, slinging her tote bag of medicine across her body. Running around behind the house, she let herself in the back door, closed it, and locked it behind her. "Donnie, it's me," she called out. A Greek groan answered her. Maya had set towards the cluttered kitchen table. She sighed and glanced around the dirty, neglected room. Gone were the shining surfaces as well-ordered pans and utensils she was used to seeing in Mrs. Thompson's domain. The sink was piled with dishes. The granite counters were smeared with stains. Maya didn't want to think about the fluids they were. The room smelled putrid, like spoiled food. Maya tried to remember sitting in the Thompsons' kitchen eating snickerdoodles and listening to Mr. Thompson's bad knock-knock jokes. Maya almost hear them now. Knock-knocks. Who's there? Cancer. Cancer who? Cancer, see, I'm busy. That had been the last joke he ever told her. She forced herself to pretend to laugh. She cried copiously when he pressed the envelope full of cash into her hand. "Take care of the kids until my child services arrive," he asked pleadingly. Maya had nodded. She didn't want to have the heart to tell him that child services can keep up with all the orphan kids. She'd take care of Donnie, Parker, and Aurora until the end. As she reached into the fridge for the fruit cup now, Maya wondered if the memories of her happy times in his room had really been in his lifetime. It seemed like it happened to another Maya, maybe in one of those parallel realities Jackson used to like to talk about. Maya froze and went into the fridge. Parallel reality. Was this real? She returned to what if question that had been nagging her ever since she looked up at the stars. What if this wasn't real? After all, how could it be real? Everyone was dying of cancer. The street was filled with fast-growing jelly beans. What if she was in the AR booth? If she was, how could she tell? She thought back her big augmented birthday bash. When she was partying with the crowd of well-wishers, she hadn't felt virtual at all. It had seemed real as anything else she had ever experienced. How could she know whether this was real? Maya grabbed the fruit cup and pulled her hand from the fridge. She pulled the fridge door and muted whump. The fridge hummed, and Maya remained there as she mesmerized by the sound until a thud came from the back of the house. Maya jerked herself out of a trance, quickly grabbed a bag of medicine in a tote, and trotted out of the kitchen. It sounded like Donnie had fallen out of bed. He hurried to his room. Sure enough, Donnie was on the floor. "What were you doing down there, bud?" Maya asked him brightly, as if his face were contorted in pain, as if his lips weren't cracked, and as if he wasn't as skeletal as a cadaver. Donnie mumbled something that sounded like a brr, but he knew what she was trying to tell her. He dropped Bert, his stuffed alligator. Maya picked up his fallen, spittle-encrusted plush toy. When she effortlessly lifted what was left of the rambunctious little boy she used to play hide-and-seek with. "Can you eat some fruit?" she asked, holding up the fruit cup. Donnie shook his head. Maya sighed and switched out his extravagant bag. She glanced at her watch as she did, and she had to get back home. Lena had been without food or meds for too long, and she tried to get something in Avro and Axel on the way. She could check on the Davis twins. Maybe she set the fruit cup on Donnie's nightstand. She tucked Bert into Donnie's lax arm. "I'll be back, kiddo," she told him. He blinked up at her. His eyes shifted as if he was realizing who she was. For a second, his face looked more animated. Weakly, he lifted a hand and pointed across the room. Maya turned to scan the shelves hugged at the wall. Donnie's bag. "What's he pointing at?" "Psst," Donnie said. Maya glanced at his face. His expression was intense. She was determined as that she understood. Maya expressed the shelf as she saw it. There was a clumsy wrapped package with her name on it on the shelf. With a shaking hand, she picked it up. A piece of red folded construction paper was a tape package. She opened the paper and read, "Happy birthday, Maya." She recognized Donnie's large, crooked lettering. Maya looked back at Donnie. He was watching her with more attentiveness than she'd seen him in for days. She returned to his bed and opened the package, pulling out a vase, a tin can sprayed with gold and decorated with gold-painted rocks. She covered that her tears hadn't dried up after all. They spilled from her eyes and cascaded down her cheeks, and she looked at Donnie's straight but eager face. "This is beautiful," she exclaimed. Donnie blinked, and he closed her eyes, satisfied. Maya realized the gift must have been sitting there since the 17th non-birthday. He'd probably forgotten it. Why had he remembered it now? Wiping her eyes, leaned over and kissed Donnie's forehead. She felt the vase against her heart, and she left the room. Back in the kitchen, Maya splashed water in her face. She grabbed her tote bag, tucking the vase in the medicine. She glanced out of the kitchen window and tensed to see how many more jelly people were in the Thompsons' front yard. She was going to have to sneak out the back door and go down the alley. She slipped to the utility room off the kitchen and gingerly cracked open the door. Maya exhaled in relief. The Thompsons' backyard was empty of mannequin things. She stepped out of the house and locked the door behind her. Trotting back to the property, she eased into the alley. She froze there the way it wasn't so clear. The alley was thick and clear-skinned creatures. There would be no way to avoid them completely. She wouldn't form a solid mass, though. Maya figured she would be able to weave her way around them. She took a deep breath, and she took off at a fast jog. 6 houses stood between Thompson's house and the Mayor's home. The first one belonged to Mr. Vance, the mean old man who kicked his dog. Maya glanced in his back window as she passed it, and she nearly stumbled when she saw him watching her. He was still alive, she thought, as all people were dead. The old man was probably too ornery to die, she thought, as she picked up her pace. The Davis twins were 2 doors down from her. It took only a few seconds to get the back fence. Unfortunately, though, the back of the Davis house was surrounded by see-through skins. Maya's pace faltered. Should she try it? Studying the creatures around the Davis house, Maya thought she'd pass through them, but then she was watched and the path disappeared. The things were reproducing faster and faster now, right before Maya's eyes. It was the closest she'd ever been to them, and they turned out more of themselves. She could actually see their jiggling masses convulsing, more ejecting into smaller versions of themselves. They did this over and over. They were spawning. No, she didn't risk going into the Davis house. She needed to get Larry and her cousins sooner rather than later. Her twins wouldn't have to wait. Maya picked up her pace again. Maya dodged under a horde of jelly creatures. Then she ran full out of the back of their house. There she was dismayed to see her beloved garden was buried in the gelatinous people things. There was barely enough room for a zip past them at the back of the door. As she passed through the last of the creatures before fumbling the door open, she brushed against it. The cold, oily feel of the thing's skin made her shudder. Bile rose up in the back of her throat. She swallowed it down and slammed the back of the door closed. She bolted it and leaned against the solid wood panel, her chest heaving. For several seconds, Maya couldn't move. Her own limbs felt as unstable as those things outside her door. A faint cry coming from her parents' room got her going again. "I'm coming," she called. She couldn't tell if it was Axel or Avril who cried out. When she got to the room, she realized it was Avril. Axel was unconscious, his little fist curled tightly around the top of the dirty blanket that was covered him. Maya cringed at the sight of his filth, but she had to find time to wash the linens and get everyone cleaned up. Rushing to Avril's side, Maya dropped his totes and picked up the pudding container she left for his little girl. It had been opened, of course. Avril thrashed in bed, painful grimace on her face. Maya grabbed Avril and wiped her in a hug. "I'm here, Nina, I'm here." Avril moaned and cried out again. Maya brushed Avril's wet, matted hair on her clammy forehead. She rocked the child in her arms and started humming a lullaby. Maya wasn't sure how long she hummed and rocked, quite a while. She decided when she realized that one of her arms had gotten numb and supporting Avril's weight. Maya eased her cousin back into her bed, and then she looked over at Axel. Axel's face was no longer clenched. His little hands were slack. So was his face. He was gone. Maya closed her eyes, waiting for the tears to flow again. They didn't come. Maybe she's used to reserves when she'd seen Donnie's gift. Opening her eyes, Maya leaned over and kissed Axel's already cooling skin. "Goodbye, my sweet boy," she whispered. Her spirit was numb as her arm. Maya stood, and she turned out or left her parents' room. Straightening her shoulders, she headed down the hall and checked on Alina. Would she be gone too? Would it be so bad if she was? Just outside her doorway, Maya sank to the floor. She closed her eyes and let her head fall back against the wall with a thunk. She barely felt the impact. She couldn't do it anymore. Who was she kidding? There was no way she could keep up with trying to feed and medicate the people who were left for her to care for. What was the point? Everyone was going to die. Everyone but Maya. Maya opened her eyes. Why wasn't she getting sick? She didn't seem to happening to everyone around her. It was as if it was the focal point of everything. Just like she had been her big birthday. Maybe she was doing the AR unit. Maya touched her forehead, where a faint pain was still discernible. She'd been far too busy to pay attention to it, but it was there. Was it there because the headband was still in place? Maya took her head. No, it was all too intense to be part of some computer-generated scenario. But why was it happening? Had the AR boost somehow augmented a whole world? Or had she jumped into a parallel universe? Maya sighed. She could not know the answer to these questions. Probably no one did. Maya stood. She had to stop feeling sorry for herself, and she still needed to check on Alina. Even though if Alina was going to die, she deserved as much comfort as Maya could offer until then. Maya glanced at the bedroom window as she crossed to Alina's bed. She wished she hadn't. Just in time, she ran in the hallway. The jelly beings outside her house multiplied alarmingly. A mountain of them was pressing against the house, as if trying to merge with the dwelling. Maya stared at a fragile glass covering the window. Maybe the threat she dealt sliding around the jelly creatures had finally arrived. But what could she do about it? Maya decided to play ostrich, out of sight, out of mind. She turned her back to the window and went to her sister's side. Alina was still so still that Maya thought she was gone. She felt her sister's fragile wrist. Nope, Alina was still alive. Barely a faint pulse fluttered against her thin skin. Without looking at the window, Maya reached into one of the tote bags, pulled out a bag of medicine. She hooked it up and checked the rate of the drip. She wasn't sure what she was bothering. Alina was obviously unconscious, and she would probably pass away without waking up. But Maya needed to feel like she was doing something. Maya was starting to lie down on the bed next to her sister. Window behind her shattered. Maya spun about a series of loud cracks and clatters throughout the house. She screamed. The jelly beings were no longer pressing against the house. They were pouring into the house through the broken windows, sloshing through the jagged opening of the transparent octopus with an infinite number of legs. The aggression of the vicious humanoids were more liquid and solid. They flowed into the room, as if they were glassy jellyfish-filled tsunami surging up into the beach. Maya swirled onto Alina. She bent over and lifted her sister, but she realized immediately that Alina was no longer breathing. Her hardly there pulse was gone. Maya didn't leave her sister's body in the room when something slick started and circled Maya's ankle. She couldn't think anymore. All she could do was react. She turned and ran from the room. Barreling down the hall, Maya careened around the corner, toward the kitchen. She didn't have a solid plan in her head. She put some part in her mind and thought if she could get to the garage, she would be safe. The garage had no windows. Both of the garage door and the main door were thick and strong. How long could she hold out in there? She didn't think that far ahead. All she wanted to do now was get away from the squishy mass of gel humanoids. She quickly thought that things were mindless, but now she wondered, would they have intention? If they did, what did they want? Maya glanced into the kitchen. She gasped. The kitchen was filled with the creatures. She looked to her left. So was the living room. All the windows of her house were shattered. The front door had been smashed open. The doll things were tumbling forward to her in all directions. Even though each individual jelly thing didn't make action on its own, except for push out more jelly things, the conjugation of the created movement. They were like specks of dirt. One of them might be harmless, but combined together they had enough weight to force bury her and cascade over her. If the things had intention to get a communal one, and it didn't appear to be a good one, they were slowly, surely surrounding her. Maya lunged to the door leading out of the garage. She flung it open, leaping into the darkness before slamming the door closed behind her. Instantly, she realized her mistake. She had left the house earlier. She hadn't closed the garage door fast enough. Some of the creatures had obviously fallen in before the door had come down. Maya was overtaken by a squishy, cold, slimy mass. But the sensation was disgusting. It felt like she had thrown herself into a bowl of sticky rice noodles. The jelly beings filled the garage, and now they were incorporating Maya as if she was the essential missing part of their collective. They entwined around her, merging with her, smothering her. Seeking comfort and strength, Maya groped her gold rose. When she found it, she glanced her fists around it, trying to fill herself with the love it represented. If only it was magic rose, like ruby shoes it could transport her back to. Maya's mouth and nose filled with the lentil mush of the creatures embraced her. She struggled to get air, expecting to reach each breath to be her last, but her last breath didn't come. The spongy, ever-expanding weight burgeoning above her, it felt like her body couldn't be able to take the pressure any longer, but it did. Maya couldn't see anything. She wasn't near smell anything. She hadn't gone beyond the feeling, too. All she was aware of the force above her, and even that was becoming too much for her mind to comprehend. Why wasn't she dead yet? When would this be over? Maya tried to inhale, but couldn't. Hopefully this would end soon. Or would it? Dang. Dang, 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 dang. Like, Miss Adrena Raines Wagner, you are nuts. You kidding me? Like, this is insane. Like, this is, this definitely is a higher level than the average FNAF Pizzaplex. Like, sure, it's like the same amount of death, but it's like so much more. It's like, it's as if they went, you know what, only people who read these are the teenagers. So let's make it for the teenagers. And they just took it. They took it and ran. It's as if it was candy. This is insanity. Like, that final chapter was insanity. Like, oh my goodness. That was probably my favorite story. I believe it was Miss Wagner who made that chapter, but let me check. Under Construction. That was the name of it. I believe that was Adrena Wagner that made that story. But, yeah, damn. I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. I hope you guys are able to go to sleep tonight. I probably won't be. Because a book has got me scared. Because that's actually, like, really damn detailed. It makes you imagine it. It uses imagery like, wow, it's beautiful. But it shouldn't be. It just explained that she's gonna die, but she can't. In the same 5 pages, her niece she loved died. Her sister died. Her parents dead. It's like she fought for no conclusion. This did something that stories should do more. A fighting resolution. Fighting and fighting and fighting and just it not getting anywhere. Because it kind of puts realism into you, you know? It's like sometimes in life, and usually motivational people are like, you should keep fighting even if you think you're going to fail. But sometimes, it's very rare, but fighting for something just ends in nothing. And cancer is a huge, it's a great example of that. Like, yes, if a loved one has cancer, you should fight it because they could beat it. It's always a chance. It's always a percentage. But something as big as the 2 cancers they show in it, I believe, are some of the highest killing cancers. Brain cancer and breast cancer. It's like, it's insanity. It really is. And I'm not going to be like, oh, well, they're the only cancers that matter. No. Other cancers do horrible things. From heartburn to stomach aches to clots. That's more of a girl thing, but guys can get it too. I've just never. Doesn't matter. But it affects. That story really just puts you in the mindset of, damn, that's happening. That's most likely the life of someone right now. While you and me are speaking. That shit's kind of deep. I don't know. I'm going to get roasted on it anyways in the future. Be like, oh, you read books. And I'll be like, yeah. I love my reading, though. That was pure insanity. And I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. People like, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. I don't know what book we're reading next, but yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.